The date was September 13th, 2019, at approximately 0300 hours Eastern Pacific Time, hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline, in a desolate, unforgiving stretch of international waters known as the Eastern Pacific Transit Zone. This is where the world's most dangerous cargo moves in silence, and where the U.S. Navy's most elite counter-narcotics teams operate in absolute secrecy. What the crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Vandegrift spotted was not a vessel in distress or a legitimate fishing trawler. It was a low-profile vessel, or LPV. To the untrained eye, it was barely visible. A dark, sleek phantom riding just inches above the waterline, a design engineered specifically to evade radar and detection. But the Vandegrift's intelligence team had been tracking this ghost for weeks. This LPV was no ordinary vessel. It was an estimated $420 million payload of pure cocaine, a staggering amount capable of flooding entire continents with illegal narcotics. The operation was codenamed Ironclad, and after weeks of relentless pursuit and intelligence gathering, the time for the takedown had arrived. The sea was deceptively calm, a deep, menacing black under a sliver of a moon. This was the perfect setup for a disaster, or a monumental victory. The command was given: execute immediate intercept. The go-fast interceptor boats launched from the Vandegrift's side, crewed by members of the specialized LEDET, Law Enforcement Detachment Team. These men are the Navy's frontline warriors in the drug war, trained for close quarters combat and maritime boarding in the most hostile conditions. Their mission was simple but deadly: secure the vessel, secure the crew, and secure the cargo. The LPV crew, aware they were cornered, initiated their emergency protocol, but it was already too late. Within minutes, the LEDET team had closed the distance, their assault rifles raised, and the high-powered searchlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. It was a flawless execution of a high-risk maneuver, textbook precision against the chaotic backdrop of the open ocean. They had successfully seized the cocaine ship. The immediate victory was euphoric. A single seizure of this magnitude represented a significant blow to the transnational criminal organizations that rely on these narco-subs and LPVs to move their product. But the true, unforgettable story of the Ironclad operation began not with the seizure, but in the chaotic, high-stakes minutes that followed. Because, as the saying goes on the high seas, when you think you've won, the ocean, or the cartel, often has one last brutal surprise waiting for you. Then this happened. The atmosphere on the LPV was tense, a mix of adrenaline and the cold dread of failure from the smuggler's crew. The LEDET team quickly secured the 3 crew members, all seasoned sailors, stoic and uncooperative. The immediate priority shifted from capture to stabilization. A prize crew was placed on the LPV, tasked with keeping the seized vessel afloat until a larger Coast Guard cutter could arrive to take custody of the evidence and the prisoners. But this is where the predictable narrative of a successful drug bust takes a sharp, terrifying turn, the THIS that the original title promised. The LPV, deliberately weighted down for a lower profile, was already inherently unstable. It was a smuggling vessel, not a legitimate ship, designed for a one-way trip, not long-term stability. As the Navy and Coast Guard crews began the painstaking process of offloading the massive cargo, a logistical nightmare involving hundreds of tightly packed bales, the LPV began to take on water, but not in the way one would expect from a simple hull breach. The smugglers, in their final desperate act of sabotage, had activated a complex series of hidden scuttling valves. These were not immediately obvious or accessible, designed to sink the vessel and destroy the evidence, denying the US government the valuable intelligence and the massive haul. Suddenly, the Navy and Coast Guard teams found themselves in a race against the clock and the crushing weight of the ocean. The vessel, listing dangerously, began to sink rapidly. This wasn't just a complication, it was a crisis. $420 million worth of evidence was plunging toward the deep, along with the very real risk of losing the prize crew assigned to the ship. The war on drugs had quickly become a desperate battle for survival. The true twist was the shift in mission focus. The LEDET team, moments after achieving a monumental seizure, had to become a rapid response maritime rescue unit, trying to save both the evidence and their own. They now faced a dilemma that military strategists rarely train for. Should they prioritize saving the valuable cargo, or should they prioritize the safety of their personnel and the captured crew? The answer, as always in the US military, was immediate. But the stakes remained terrifyingly high. The battle was far from over. It had just moved from combat to engineering. The structural integrity of the LPV was deteriorating at an alarming rate. The sea, once a calm backdrop, seemed to turn actively against the rescue effort, with the rising water inside the vessel accelerating the scuttling. The team from the Vandegrift and the arriving Coast Guard cutter faced a grim realization. They couldn't stop the sinking. The smugglers had done their job with chilling efficiency. The command decision was decisive. Personnel first, evidence second. The prize crew and the 3 smugglers were safely evacuated from the rapidly submerging vessel. But the problem of the cargo remained. To let $420 million in cocaine sink would be a demoralizing loss for the operation and a massive win for the cartel. This necessitated a shift to a frantic salvage effort, a chaotic, high-speed, and dangerous process of pulling hundreds of bales of cocaine out of the sinking hold before they became irrecoverable. Imagine the scene. Elite sailors, their training focused on stealth and firepower, now wrestling with heavy, waterlogged bales, pulling them hand over hand from a ship that was literally collapsing beneath their feet. Every second counted. Every bale retrieved was a victory against the dark web of international crime. Ultimately, the LPV sank. It slipped beneath the waves, taking the last of its cargo with it, becoming a $420 million tomb at the bottom of the Eastern Pacific. But the efforts of the Navy and Coast Guard were not in vain. Through sheer determination and rapid action, they managed to salvage the vast majority of the cocaine. The specific amount salvaged was later confirmed by the Coast Guard to be an extraordinary testament to their performance under extreme duress. The lesson learned from the Ironclad operation was a brutal but essential one. The enemy is not only human, but is also the vessel itself and the hostile environment of the ocean. Drug cartels are constantly evolving their tactics, treating their LPVs as disposable, self-destructing vessels designed to be sacrificed to protect the broader network and infrastructure. This successful seizure, despite the near-catastrophic twist, fundamentally changed U.S. Navy and Coast Guard boarding protocols, placing a new, urgent focus on immediate and aggressive counter-scuttling procedures. The sinking of the LPV introduced immediate and severe complications, primarily centering around the captured crew and the structural aftermath of the seizure. The 3 smugglers, now safely aboard the Coast Guard cutter, were the primary source of intelligence, yet their silence was as intimidating as the ocean itself. They were hardened veterans of the cartel, displaying a chilling lack of emotion or cooperation. They understood the price of cooperation was far higher than the price of silence, even if it meant sacrificing their own freedom. Meanwhile, back at the point of sinking, the Navy's salvage efforts continued. The true danger wasn't just the loss of evidence, but the environmental catastrophe that was narrowly averted. The LPV carried not only the illicit cargo, but also hundreds of gallons of diesel fuel, oil, and other hazardous materials. A total loss of the vessel, without proper containment, would have been an ecological disaster in an already fragile marine ecosystem. The Coast Guard teams immediately deployed containment booms and absorbent materials around the wreckage site, turning the bust into a complex hazardous materials operation. The key to the final moments of the salvage was securing the engine room. Navy divers, highly trained in underwater recovery, descended into the swirling dark water where the LPV had disappeared. They worked in conditions of near zero visibility, fighting the currents and the psychological stress of maneuvering around a ship intentionally designed to self-destruct. Their objective was to neutralize any remaining fuel sources and gather any documentation that may have been intentionally left behind, a final piece of the puzzle that could lead them to the cartel's leadership. What the divers found confirmed the intelligence reports. The vessel's engine room was meticulously prepared for sinking. Tools, logs, and even personal effects were secured in a way that suggested the crew fully expected to be captured or lost, treating the mission as a sacrifice. This chilling discovery provided a psychological insight into the cartel's operation. They instill a fatalistic loyalty, viewing their men as expendable assets in a billion-dollar chess game. This was not just a drug bust. It was a raid on a dedicated, highly trained, and disturbingly motivated enemy. The meticulous process of documenting and transferring the salvaged cocaine, hundreds of sealed, numbered bales, took several days. Each bale was weighed, sampled, and cataloged. The sheer bulk of the evidence highlighted the logistics of the seizure. Naval vessels are not designed to carry such massive, unsanctioned loads. The storage required a continuous rotation of manpower and enhanced security protocols to safeguard the prize. But the most profound victory of the Ironclad operation wasn't the haul itself. It was the intelligence breakthrough that followed. The LPV, though sunk, yielded a few critical pieces of technological evidence: a specialized satellite communication device, a custom-built navigation system, and a highly encrypted transmission log. These devices, recovered from the sinking vessel by the Navy divers, were the equivalent of a cartel blueprint. They revealed a network of previously unknown waypoints, safe harbors, and rendezvous points across Central and South America. They confirmed that the operation was part of a larger, coordinated effort, linking the smugglers directly to a powerful cartel cell operating deep within the Amazon basin. The encrypted log was the crown jewel. Specialized decryption teams from the U.S. Coast Guard and the DEA worked around the clock, eventually cracking the code. What they uncovered was a financial manifest detailing payment structures, supply chains, and the ultimate destination of the $420 million shipment. It provided the who and where that naval intelligence had been missing for years. The capture of the cocaine was the immediate tactic. The extraction of this data was the strategic masterstroke, turning a single drug bust into a systemic disruption of the entire logistical network. This intelligence was the critical weapon, far more damaging to the cartel than the loss of the cargo itself. The fallout from the Ironclad operation was immediate and violent. Cartels rarely tolerate failure, and the loss of $420 million in revenue and, more importantly, the invaluable logistics data, triggered a brutal internal response. Naval and intelligence reports indicated a rapid, aggressive shift in cartel tactics. New encryption keys were deployed, transit routes were immediately altered, and, chillingly, high-ranking cartel members suspected of leaking information were eliminated. This is the human cost rarely seen in the headlines about drug busts. The sailors and Coast Guard personnel involved in the seizure, particularly the LEDET members, became immediate targets. Their safety protocols were amplified, and their identities were highly protected. The Navy understood that by disrupting the cartel's cash flow, they had painted a target on their own backs. The 3 captured smugglers offered no testimony, remaining true to their fatalistic code. However, their physical condition and their lack of identification provided key forensic evidence. Analysis of their teeth, bone structure, and even specific surgical scars allowed U.S. and international law enforcement agencies to connect them to other known cartel activities, painting a fuller picture of the international scope of the criminal organization. This happened of the operation was thus twofold: the near disaster of the sinking vessel and the strategic victory of the intelligence collected. But there was a deeper this as well: the psychological toll on the sailors. They were facing an enemy willing to sink millions to keep secrets, and this confrontation with the ruthless efficiency of the cartels underscored the continuous danger of their mission. It solidified the Navy's view that counter-narcotics is not just a police action, but a low-intensity, high-stakes conflict fought hundreds of miles from land. The sinking LPV and the seizure of the $420 million payload forced a fundamental re-evaluation of naval doctrine. LPVs were only the beginning. The next generation of smuggling was already underway. The narco-submarines, custom-built, fully or semi-submersible vessels costing upwards of $5 million each. These vessels are far more difficult to detect than LPVs, running mostly underwater, making them virtually invisible to surface radar and even difficult for most sonar systems to track. The U.S. Navy and Coast Guard had to rapidly adapt, dedicating billions of dollars to new technology and specialized training. The focus shifted from surface interception to deep-sea detection and capture. The development of advanced airborne radar systems and specialized deep-water sonar buoys became paramount. New LEDET teams were formed, trained in procedures to board a moving submersible, a maneuver that rivals some of the most dangerous military actions in the world. The Ironclad operation provided the crucial operational intelligence to fuel this evolution. The captured satellite communication devices and the cracked encryption logs allowed American intelligence to anticipate the design and operational procedures of these new narco subs. It was a vicious cycle of adaptation. The cartel innovates to smuggle, and the Navy innovates to stop them. This continuous cat-and-mouse game has made the Eastern Pacific one of the most technologically contested waterways in the world. The naval personnel patrolling these waters are not just sailors. They are intelligence analysts, engineers, and commandos, all rolled into one, fighting a global war against an enemy that views every technological leap as a challenge to be overcome. The story of the sinking cocaine ship is, ultimately, the story of how a single high-stakes incident can forever change the course of modern warfare and law enforcement at sea. The legacy of the Ironclad operation is felt throughout the U.S. military and federal law enforcement today. The $420 million seizure serves as a continuous benchmark for success, but the operational lessons learned are far more enduring. The immediate realization was the critical importance of a multi-agency approach. The seamless coordination between the USS Vandegrift, Navy, the Coast Guard cutter, salvage and law enforcement, and the DEA, intelligence and decryption, proved that no single agency could defeat this enemy alone. This operation laid the groundwork for even deeper integration and joint training exercises, emphasizing the value of shared intelligence and unified command structures. Furthermore, the operational review stressed the psychological preparedness required for such missions. Sailors were often involved in high adrenaline seizures, followed by the grim reality of environmental cleanup and evidence recovery, a demanding and often demoralizing sequence of events. New debriefing and mental health protocols were implemented to support the personnel who faced these intense, high-stress situations. The narrative of the bust, the successful seizure, the unexpected sinking, and the frantic recovery is now taught in military academies and Coast Guard training facilities globally. It is an example of the brutal, unpredictable nature of the contemporary war on drugs, where the elements themselves can be weaponized by the enemy. The ultimate impact is simple. The cartel lost a massive asset and, more critically, lost years of operational security due to the intelligence recovered. The U.S. Navy and its partners proved that they could adapt, overcome, and turn a near catastrophe into a strategic victory. The "then this happened" moment was a harsh reminder, but it was a lesson well learned in the eternal hunt on the high seas. The LPV that sank during the Ironclad operation was estimated to cost the cartel close to $5 million to build. This figure includes specialized materials, powerful but quiet engines, and the highly skilled labor required to construct a vessel designed to travel thousands of miles just inches above the water. For a legitimate business, a $5 million asset is a major investment. For the cartel, it's a cost of doing business, an expenditure easily absorbed by the colossal profits generated by a single successful transit. This disposable economic model is the true logistical challenge faced by the U.S. Navy. The cartels are not concerned with maintaining a fleet. They are concerned with ensuring a high percentage of their fleet completes its mission. The narco sub is built with one purpose: to travel fast and far, offload its cargo, and then often be abandoned or scuttled. They are essentially single-use military-grade delivery platforms, a chilling parallel to the use of drones or expendable aircraft in conventional warfare. The knowledge that the LPV was designed to sink upon imminent capture was a critical intelligence finding. It immediately changed the Navy's boarding strategy. Prior to Ironclad, the priority was often the immediate seizure and control. Post-Ironclad, the protocol became an aggressive, multi-pronged approach: simultaneous securing of the crew, immediate searching for scuttling valves, and instant data extraction of any visible electronics, all before the vessel had a chance to sink and destroy the evidence. The captured crew members, though silent, were themselves proof of the cartel's professional infrastructure. They were paid handsomely, not just for the journey, but for their silence, a guaranteed payout to their families should they be captured or lost at sea. This system of economic reward and internal coercion provides a powerful psychological barrier to intelligence gathering, a code of silence enforced by financial stability and fear. It is a level of sophistication the U.S. military is still struggling to fully counteract in the remote, uncontrolled waters of the Pacific. The loss of the LPV to the waves, while a tactical setback, became a major catalyst for naval technological advancement. The lesson was clear. If the enemy is building stealth vessels, the counterforce must invest in next-generation detection. Following Ironclad, the Navy significantly increased its deployment of P-8 Poseidon aircraft, a highly advanced maritime surveillance plane. The P-8, equipped with sophisticated radar and electro-optical infrared sensors, is designed to spot the tiny, low-profile wakes of LPVs and narco subs from high altitudes. The success of the P-8 became paramount in the ongoing efforts to locate these stealthy craft before they could reach their destination. Furthermore, there was a renewed focus on USVs and UUVs. These autonomous, long-endurance drones are deployed as forward scouts, essentially performing the tedious, dangerous work of sweeping vast expanses of the ocean for anomalies. By using AI-driven sonar and radar, these robotic units can detect the subtle signatures of a submerged narco sub long before a conventional warship could, freeing up multi-billion-dollar destroyers for interception roles. The financial commitment was staggering, but necessary. The US military realized that the war on drugs had become a technology race. The cartels, with their multi-billion-dollar annual revenue stream, can afford to lose the $5 million boat. But the US must invest billions to secure the region, ensuring that the critical sea lanes are not overwhelmed by illicit traffic. Ironclad was the defining moment that shifted the strategic spending priorities towards high-tech, proactive interdiction methods. The true, deeper secret unveiled by the decryption of the LPV's communication logs was the extent of the cartel's entanglement with global organized crime and even state-sponsored actors. The manifest and logistics data revealed an elaborate money laundering scheme that funneled profits through various international financial hubs, connecting the Colombian jungles not just to the streets of American cities, but to banks in Europe and Asia. This established that the profits from this $420 million haul were not simply lining the pockets of a few drug lords. They were financing a vast array of illegal activities, human trafficking, weapons smuggling, and even providing funding to paramilitary groups in unstable regions. The LPV was merely the tip of a terrifyingly large criminal iceberg. The intelligence confirmed a psychological truth the US Navy had long suspected. These cartels operate with the discipline and ruthlessness of a military force, but without the constraints of international law or human rights. The Ironclad operation, in sinking the vessel and capturing its secrets, became a crucial step in exposing this global financial and criminal infrastructure. The true war is not just against the drugs themselves, but against the complex, state-level network of corruption and violence that the drug trade bankrolls. The story of the seizure is a continuous warning. The enemy is constantly evolving, and only continuous vigilance and a deep, multi-layered strategy will be enough to win the day.